Dr. Kim Hyun-woo walked down the long white hallway of the Galaxy Research Station on planet Vega 7. His footsteps echoed on the metal floor as he pushed his cleaning cart. The wheels made a squeaking sound that he had gotten used to after working here for 3 years. Today felt like every other day. Wake up at 6 in the morning, eat breakfast, from a can walk to the research building and clean the alien creature cages. The job was not exciting, but it paid well. Hyun-woo needed the money to send back to his family on Earth. His mother was sick and his younger sister was still in school. Working on this distant planet was lonely, but it was the only way he could make enough money to help them. The research station was a huge building with 5 floors. The first floor had offices where the scientists worked. The second floor had laboratories full of strange machines and computers. The third floor had meeting rooms where important people made decisions. The fourth floor had living quarters for the workers. But the fifth floor was where Hyun-woo spent most of his time. This was where they kept the alien creatures. There were 50 cages on the 5th floor. Each cage was made of strong metal bars and thick glass. Inside each cage was a different type of alien creature that the government had caught from various planets. Some creatures were small and looked like colorful birds. Others were large and looked like giant lizards. Most of them were dangerous and wild. Hyun-woo had learned to be very careful around the cages. Many of the creatures would try to attack when humans came near. They would bare their teeth, make angry sounds, and throw themselves against the cage walls. Some creatures could spit poison. Others had sharp claws that could cut through metal. If they tried hard enough, the scientists studied these creatures to learn about life on other planets. They wanted to understand how different species evolved and survived. They also wanted to know if any of the creatures could be useful to humans. Some creatures might have special abilities that could help with medicine or technology, but Hyun-woo did not think much about the science part. His job was simple. Feed the creatures, clean their cages, and make sure they stayed healthy. He had been doing this same routine for so long that he could do it. With his eyes closed, this morning started like every other morning. Hyun-woo checked his supply cart to make sure he had everything he needed. Fresh food for the creatures, clean water, cleaning supplies, and safety equipment. He put on his thick gloves and protective glasses. Then he began his rounds. The first 10 cages held small creatures that looked like flying squirrels but with purple fur and 6 legs. They were always hungry and would make chirping sounds when they saw him coming. Hyun-woo gave them their food and cleaned their water bowls. The creatures watched him with their big round eyes but did not try to attack. The next 20 cages held medium-sized creatures that were much more aggressive. There were snake-like beings with multiple heads. There were creatures that looked like giant spiders but walked on 2 legs. There were also some that looked almost like humans but had green skin and no hair. All of these creatures would growl and hiss when Hyun-woo came near. He had to be very quick when feeding them. As Hyun-woo worked his way down the hallway, he noticed that the building was quieter than usual. Normally there would be sounds from the creatures. They would make noise when they heard him coming. But today many of the cages were silent. This made him feel uneasy. Silent creatures sometimes meant sick creatures. Sick creatures meant more work for him. When he reached cage number 47, Hyun-woo stopped and stared. He had to blink several times to make sure he was seeing correctly. Inside the cage sat a creature that looked almost human but with pale blue skin and long silver hair that reached down to its shoulders. The creature was not making any noise. It was not trying to attack or escape. Instead, it sat cross-legged on the floor of the cage holding something in its hands. Hyun-woo looked closer and felt his heart start beating faster. The creature was holding a book. Not just any book, but a book that Hyun-woo recognized. It was his copy of Earth History Volume 3. He had been reading it during his lunch break last week when he dropped it somewhere in the building. He had looked everywhere for it, but never found it. Somehow this book had ended up in the alien creature's cage, but that was not the strangest part. The creature was not just holding the book, it was reading it. The creature would look down at the pages for a few seconds, then turn to the next page. It was reading at a normal speed just like a human would read. Its golden eyes moved back and forth across the lines of text. Hyun-woo stood frozen outside the cage. In all his years working here, he had never seen anything like this. All the other creatures were wild and seemed to have no intelligence beyond basic animal instincts. But this creature was different. It was calm and peaceful. It seemed to understand what books were for. The creature looked up from the book and noticed Hyun-woo watching. Their eyes met through the metal bars. The creature did not seem scared or angry. Instead, it gave a small nod as if to say hello. Then it went back to reading the book. It turned another page and continued reading as if nothing had happened. Hyun-woo felt his hands shaking. He set down his cleaning supplies and moved closer to the cage. He wanted to get a better look at this strange creature. The creature had a humanoid face with features that looked almost human but more refined. Its skin was a beautiful shade of light blue, like the color of ice. Its hair was long and silver, and seemed to shine even in the dim light of the hallway. The creature was wearing simple gray clothes that all the captured beings were given. But unlike the other creatures, this one kept its clothes clean and neat. It sat with good posture and handled the book carefully, as if it understood that books were valuable and should not be damaged. Hyun-woo watched for 20 minutes. The creature continued reading and turning pages. Sometimes it would pause and seem to think about what it had read. Once it even seemed to smile slightly at something in the book. This was definitely not normal animal behavior. From across the room, Hyun-woo heard his supervisor Park Jin-ho calling his name. He quickly grabbed his cleaning supplies and pretended to be working on the cage. But his mind was racing with questions. What kind of creature was this? Where did it come from? How did it learn to read? And most importantly, why was it locked up in a cage like a dangerous animal when it was clearly intelligent? As he moved on to the next cage, Hyun-woo kept looking back at cage 47. The creature continued reading peacefully. It seemed completely absorbed in the book about Earth's history. Hyun-woo wondered what the creature thought about human civilization. Did it understand the wars and conflicts described in the book? Did it judge humans for their violent past? The rest of his workday passed in a blur. Hyun-woo could not stop thinking about the reading creature. He made mistakes with his other tasks. He spilled water in cage 32. He forgot to give food to the creatures in cage 18. His supervisor noticed his distraction and asked if he was feeling sick. But Hyun-woo was not sick. He was confused and curious and maybe a little bit excited. After 3 years of boring routine work, he had finally found something interesting. Tomorrow he would come back and try to learn more about this mysterious creature. Maybe he would even try to communicate with it. For the first time in months, Hyun-woo felt like his job might not be so boring after all. The next morning, Hyun-woo woke up earlier than usual. He had not slept well because he kept thinking about the creature in cage 47. He wondered if he had imagined the whole thing. Maybe the creature had just been holding the book without actually reading it. Maybe his eyes had played tricks on him. But when he got to work and walked down the hallway to cage 47, he saw that everything was real. The creature was sitting in the same cross-legged position holding the same book. It had made progress through the pages. Yesterday, it had been reading somewhere in the middle of the book. Today, it was much closer to the end. Hyun-woo stood outside the cage and watched. The creature looked up and saw him. Again, it gave that small, polite nod. Then it held up the book and pointed to a page. It seemed to be trying to show Hyun-woo something interesting it had found in the book. This made Hyun-woo very curious. He looked around to make sure no one else was watching. The hallway was empty. His supervisor would not arrive for another hour. The other workers were busy on different floors. This was his chance to try something. Hyun-woo had brought another book with him today. It was a simple book about Korean culture and traditions. He had chosen it because it had many pictures and was written in easy language. If the creature could really read, maybe it would enjoy learning about different cultures. He walked closer to the cage and held up the new book. The creature immediately became interested. It set down the history book and came closer to the bars. Its golden eyes focused on the new book with obvious excitement. Hyun-woo opened the food slot at the bottom of the cage. This was a small opening used to pass food and water to the creatures. Normally, he would never put anything else through this slot. But today he slipped the Korean culture book through the opening. The creature quickly picked up the book and examined it carefully. It looked at the cover, which showed a picture of a traditional Korean temple. Then it opened the book and began looking at the pages. Its eyes moved across the text, and it studied the pictures with great interest. After a few minutes, the creature looked up at Hyung-woo. Then it did something that made Hyung-woo's heart nearly stop. The creature spoke in clear Korean language. "My name is Taemin," the creature said. Its voice was soft and musical like wind chimes. "Thank you for the books. I have been so lonely here." Hyung-woo stepped backward in shock. His mouth fell open and he could not speak for several seconds. The creature had not only spoken, but it had spoken perfect Korean. There was no accent or strange pronunciation. It sounded like a native speaker. "How do you know Korean?" Hyun-woo finally managed to ask. His voice came out as a whisper. "I learn languages quickly," Taemin replied. "I listen to you and the others talking every day. I also read the books you gave me. Your language is beautiful but sad. The history books tell me your people have suffered much." Hyun-woo felt dizzy. He had to lean against the wall to keep from falling down. This was impossible. The creature was not just intelligent. It was more intelligent than most humans. It had learned an entire language just by listening and reading. "Where do you come from?" Hyun-woo asked. "My home planet has 3 moons," Taemin said. "We call ourselves the lunar folk. Our world is peaceful. We spend our lives reading and learning and sharing knowledge. We have great libraries that stretch across continents. We have schools where children learn about art and science and philosophy." "Why are you here?" Hyun-woo asked. "I was exploring space looking for new knowledge to bring back to my people," Taemin explained. "We had heard about Earth and wanted to learn about human civilization. I was studying your planet from a distance when your military ships found me. They thought I was a threat and captured me." Hyun-woo felt terrible. He realized that Taemin was not a dangerous creature at all. He was an explorer and a scholar. He was probably more educated than most of the scientists who worked at this research station. "Are there others like you?" Hyun-woo asked. "Yes," Taemin said sadly. "Some of my friends were captured too. They are probably in other facilities like this one. We came in peace, but your people saw us as enemies." From that day forward, Hyun-woo visited Taemin whenever he could. He would bring new books and they would talk about many topics. Taemin was curious about everything. He asked about Earth culture, human history, science, technology, and art. He was especially interested in literature and philosophy. Tae-min also taught Hyun-woo about the universe. He described planets where the sky was purple and the oceans were made of liquid crystals. He told stories about civilizations that had mastered space travel thousands of years ago. He explained scientific concepts that human scientists had not yet discovered, but their conversations had to be secret. Hyun-woo knew that if anyone found out about Taemin's intelligence, it would cause big problems. The government would probably want to study Taemin even more intensively. They might perform painful experiments on him. They might never let him go home. One day while Hyun-woo was talking to Taemin, he heard footsteps in the hallway. He quickly pretended to be cleaning the cage while Taemin sat quietly and pretended to be just another alien creature. Lee So-young walked around the corner. She was another worker who cleaned cages on the night shift. She was young and kind-hearted and always treated the creatures with gentleness. But she was also curious and observant. "Hi, Hyun-woo," she said. "You seem to spend a lot of time at this cage. Is there something special about this creature?" Hyun-woo felt nervous. He did not want to lie to So-young, but he also could not tell her the truth. "It seems calmer than the others," he said. "Maybe it is just less aggressive." So-young looked at Taemin, who was sitting quietly in the corner. She noticed that he looked cleaner and healthier than when he first arrived. She also noticed that there were books in his cage. "Why are there books in there?" she asked. "Oh, those fell in by accident," Hyun-woo said quickly. "I will remove them." But So-young was not satisfied with this answer. She had worked with alien creatures for 2 years, and she knew that they usually destroyed anything that was put in their cages. Books would normally be torn apart within minutes. But these books looked like they had been handled carefully that night. So Young could not stop thinking about Cage 47. She decided to come back during her next shift and observe the creature more closely. She had a feeling that there was more to this story than Haiyan Wu was telling her. When she arrived at the research station that night, she went straight to Cage 47. What she saw there would change her life forever. The creature was not sleeping or pacing around like the other creatures did at night. Instead, it was sitting under the dim light reading one of the books. It was turning pages at a steady pace and seemed completely absorbed in the content. So Young watched for 30 minutes. The creature never noticed her because she stayed hidden behind a pillar. She saw the creature pause sometimes and seem to think about what it had read. Once it even seemed to smile at something in the book. The next day, So Young confronted Haiyan Wu. She told him what she had seen and demanded to know the truth. Haiyan Wu realized that he could not keep the secret anymore. He decided to trust So Young and tell her everything about Tae-Min. When So Young heard Taemin speak for the first time, she was amazed. She realized immediately that keeping such an intelligent being locked in a cage was wrong. She also realized that if the government learned about Taemin's abilities, they would never let him go free. We have to help him, So Young said to Haiyan Wu. This is not right. He does not belong in a cage. He belongs with his own people, but Haiyan Wu was scared. Helping a prisoner escape would be a serious crime. They could go to prison for the rest of their lives. They could lose their jobs and their families. It was a huge risk. However, as the days passed and they got to know Taemin better, both Haiyan Wu and So Young realized that they could not abandon their friend. Taemin had become like family to them. He had taught them so much about the universe and about themselves. They could not leave him trapped forever. They began to discuss the possibility of helping Taemin escape. It would be dangerous and difficult, but it might be the only way to do the right thing. They started to make plans and prepare for what might be the most important decision of their lives. Over the next few weeks, Haiyan Wu and So Young developed a secret routine. They would take turns visiting Taemin during their shifts. Haiyan Wu would come during the day and So Young would visit at night. They brought him books, magazines, and sometimes even newspapers from Earth. They also brought him better food than the standard nutrition paste that all the creatures received. Tae-Min was grateful for their friendship. He had been alone in the cage for months before Haiyan Wu discovered him reading. During that time, he had felt hopeless and forgotten. Now he had friends who cared about him. This made his imprisonment easier to bear. The three of them would have long conversations about many topics. Taemin told them about his home planet, which was called Lunar Prime. He described cities built into the sides of mountains with bridges made of crystal that sparkled in the light of the 3 moons. He talked about the great libraries where his people stored knowledge from across the galaxy. Your people think we are just animals, Taemin said one day. But we have universities and art museums and concert halls. We have poets and philosophers and scientists. We have never hurt anyone. We only want to learn and share knowledge with other civilizations. This made Haiyan Wu feel ashamed of his own species. He had always thought that humans were the most advanced beings in the universe. But now he realized that there were many other intelligent species out there. Some of them might be even more advanced than humans. Tae-Min also taught them about other alien species that he had encountered during his travels. He told them about the tree people who lived for thousands of years and communicated through the rustling of leaves. He described the crystal beings who could create beautiful music just by thinking about it. He talked about the light dancers who could paint pictures in the air using pure energy. Are there others like them here in this facility? Haiyan Wu asked. Yes, Taemin said sadly. I have heard their voices sometimes late at night. They call out in their own languages hoping someone will answer. But the guards think they are just making animal noises. This revelation disturbed both Haiyan Wu and So Young. They realized that there might be dozens of intelligent beings trapped in this facility. All of them were being treated like wild animals when they were actually civilized people with their own cultures and families. So Young started paying more attention to the other creatures during her night shifts. She began to notice things that she had missed before. The creature in cage 32 would arrange its food in complex patterns before eating. The being in cage 18 would tap on the walls in what sounded like a coded rhythm. The creature in cage 41 would stack objects in its cage to create what looked like sculptures. These were not random behaviors. They were signs of intelligence and creativity. So Young realized that many of the so-called alien creatures were actually alien people who had been kidnapped from their homes and families. One night, So Young was walking past cage 15 when she heard something that made her stop. The creature inside was humming a melody. It was not a random sound, but a complex musical composition with harmony and rhythm. The creature saw her watching and stopped humming. It looked embarrassed, as if it had been caught doing something forbidden. So Young approached the cage slowly. The creature inside looked like a giant butterfly with colorful wings and multiple eyes. It had been labeled as a dangerous insect-like being in the facility records. It's okay, So Young said softly. Your music is beautiful. Please do not stop. The creature tilted its head and studied her with its large compound eyes. Then it began to hum again. This time the melody was even more complex and haunting. So Young stood there listening until her shift ended. She realized that this being was not just intelligent but also artistic and sensitive. The next day she told Hyeon-woo and Taemin about her discovery. Taemin was excited to hear about the musical creature. That sounds like one of the harmony folk, Taemin said. They are famous throughout the galaxy for their beautiful music. They can create songs that heal emotional pain and bring peace to troubled minds. If there is one of them here, then it is probably suffering terribly in captivity. Hyeon-woo and So Young felt overwhelmed by the scope of the problem. It was not just about helping Taemin escape. There were many other intelligent beings who needed help too. But they were just two low-level workers. How could they possibly make a difference? Meanwhile, their supervisor Park Jin-ho was becoming suspicious. He had noticed that Han-woo was spending more time than necessary at certain cages. He had also noticed that some of the creatures seemed calmer and healthier than when they first arrived. One afternoon, Jin-ho called Hyeon-woo into his office. The office was small and cluttered with papers and computer screens. Jin-ho was a middle-aged man who had worked at the facility for 10 years. He was not cruel, but he was not particularly kind either. He saw the alien creatures as objects to be studied rather than as living beings. Hyeon-woo, I have been watching your work lately, Jin-ho said. You seem to be getting emotionally attached to some of the specimens. This is not professional behavior. Hyeon-woo tried to act normal. I am just doing my job, sir, he said. I want to make sure all the creatures stay healthy. Jin-ho leaned back in his chair and studied Hyeon-woo carefully. The creature in cage 47 seems especially calm when you are around, he said. Have you been giving it special treatment? No, sir, Hyeon-woo said. I treat all the creatures the same way. Jin-ho was not convinced, but he did not have any proof of wrongdoing. He decided to keep a closer eye on Hyeon-woo. Remember, these are not pets, he said. They are research subjects. Do not make this personal. That night, Hyeon-woo told So Young and Taemin about his conversation with Jin-ho. They all realized that they were running out of time. If Jin-ho discovered the truth about Taemin, then everything would be ruined. They had to act soon. Taemin had been thinking about escape for weeks. He had been studying the layout of the facility and the schedules of the guards. He had also been testing his own abilities to see what he could do to help. I have not told you everything about my people, Taemin said. We have certain abilities that humans do not possess. We can become invisible for short periods of time. We can also communicate with electronic devices in ways that your scientists do not understand. This was amazing news. If Taemin could turn invisible, then escaping from the cage would be much easier. If he could communicate with computers, then he might be able to disable the security systems, but there was still the problem of getting him out of the building. The facility was surrounded by guards and electronic sensors. Even if Taemin could escape from his cage, he would still need help getting off the planet. Tae-min had a solution for this too. My people have been looking for me, he said. They have ships hidden in this solar system. If I can get a message to them, they will come to rescue me. But I need to reach the communications room on the third floor. So Young knew the communications room well. She had cleaned it many times during her night shifts. It was usually empty except for one guard who often fell asleep at his post. If they could create a distraction, then Taemin might be able to sneak in and send his message, but this would require perfect timing and a lot of luck. If anything went wrong, they would all be caught. Han Wu and So Young would go to prison, and Taemin would probably be moved to a more secure facility, where he would never have another chance to escape. Despite the risks they decided to try, they could not leave Taemin trapped forever. They also could not ignore all the other intelligent beings who were suffering in the facility. This might be their only chance to make a difference. They began planning the escape attempt. They studied the guard schedules and the security camera locations. They practiced their timing and rehearsed their roles. They also gathered supplies that they might need, including tools to cut through metal and electronic devices to jam communications. As the day of the escape approached, Hyun Woo and So Young felt nervous but determined. They had become friends with Taemin, and they knew that friendship sometimes required taking risks. They also knew that what was happening at the facility was wrong and that someone had to take a stand. The night before the escape attempt, Taemin thanked them for their friendship and courage. "Whatever happens tomorrow," he said, "you have given me hope. You have shown me that there are good humans who care about justice and kindness. Even if we fail, I will never forget what you have done for me." Hyun Woo and So Young felt proud, but also scared. Tomorrow they would find out if their plan would work. They would either succeed in helping their friend escape, or they would fail and face the consequences. Either way, they knew they were doing the right thing. The day of the escape arrived, gray and cloudy. Han Wu woke up feeling nervous and excited at the same time. He had barely slept the night before because his mind kept going over all the details of their plan. Every step had to work perfectly, or they would all be caught. During his regular shift, Hyun Woo tried to act normal. He cleaned the cages and fed the creatures just like every other day, but inside his heart was racing. He kept looking at the clock on the wall, counting down the hours until nighttime when their plan would begin. When he reached cage 47, Taemin was sitting quietly reading a book. But when he saw Hyun Woo, he looked up with his golden eyes and gave a small nod. This was their signal that he was ready for the escape attempt. "Are you sure you can turn invisible?" Han Wu whispered through the bars. "Yes," Taemin replied softly, "but only for about 10 minutes at a time. After that I need to rest before I can do it again. We will have to move quickly." Hyun Wu nodded and continued with his work. He had hidden a small electronic device in his cleaning cart. So Young had stolen it from the maintenance room the night before. It was designed to interfere with security cameras and door locks. They hoped it would give them the few extra minutes they needed. The hardest part of the plan was the timing. The night shift guards changed positions every 2 hours. There was a 15-minute window when one guard was leaving his post and the new guard had not yet arrived. During this window, the communications room would be empty. So Young had studied the guard schedules for weeks. She knew that Guard Kim usually left his post at the communications room at exactly 11:30. The replacement guard Lee always arrived at 11:45. This gave them 15 minutes to get Taemin to the communications room, send his message, and get back to the cage area. But first they had to get Taemin out of this cage. So Young had made a copy of the master key that opened all the cages. She had taken an impression of the key when the head guard left it on his desk during lunch break. Then she had used the workshop tools to make a duplicate key. The plan was simple, but dangerous. At 11:15, So Young would create a distraction in the east wing of the building. She would trigger a false alarm that would draw the guards away from the cage area. While the guards were investigating the alarm, Hyun Woo would use the duplicate key to open Taemin's cage. Then Taemin would use his invisibility power to sneak to the communications room. He would send a message to his people telling them where he was and asking for rescue. After sending the message, he would return to his cage and wait for his people to come. At least that was the plan. But Haiyan-Wu knew that many things could go wrong. The duplicate key might not work. The guards might not fall for the distraction. Taemin might be seen even while invisible. The communications equipment might be too complicated for him to use. As the day wore on, Haiyan-Wu noticed that their supervisor Park Jin-ho was acting strangely. He kept walking around the facility and talking to different workers. He seemed to be asking questions about their work habits and schedules. This made Haiyan-Wu worried that Jin-ho suspected something. At lunchtime, Jin-ho approached Haiyan-Wu in the cafeteria. He sat down across from him and studied his face carefully. "You look tired today," Jin-ho said. "Are you feeling all right?" "I am fine, sir," Haiyan-Wu replied. "Just a little tired from working extra shifts." Jin-ho continued to stare at him. "I have been thinking about our conversation yesterday," he said. "About you getting too attached to the creatures. I think maybe you need a break from cage duty. Starting tomorrow, I am moving you to laboratory cleaning." Haiyan-Wu's heart sank. If he was moved to laboratory cleaning, he would not be able to help Taemin anymore. The escape had to happen tonight, or it would never happen. That will not be necessary. Sir Haiyan-Wu said, "I enjoy working with the creatures. They are not causing me any problems." Jin-ho shook his head. "I have made my decision," he said. "You will start your new assignment tomorrow. I think the change will be good for you." After Jin-ho left, Haiyan-Wu felt panicked. He had to find So-young and tell her about this development. They could not wait any longer. The escape had to happen tonight, even if they were not completely ready. He found So-young in the supply room organizing cleaning materials. When he told her about Jin-ho's decision, she became very worried. "We have to move tonight," she said. "This might be our last chance to help Tae-min." They spent the rest of the day going over their plan one more time. They checked all their equipment and made sure they knew exactly what to do. They also said goodbye to Taemin in case something went wrong, and they never saw him again. As night fell, the facility became quieter. Most of the day, shift workers went home, and only the security guards and a few night shift workers remained. Haiyan-Wu and So-young had volunteered to work late to finish some extra projects. This gave them an excuse to be in the building during the escape attempt. At 11 o'clock, they took their positions. So-young went to the east wing where she would create the distraction. Haiyan-Wu went to the cage area where he would wait for her signal. They had small radio devices that would let them communicate with each other. The minutes ticked by slowly. Haiyan-Wu stood in the shadows near cage 47, watching the clock on the wall. Taemin was sitting quietly in his cage, but Haiyan-Wu could see that he was alert and ready. At 11:14, So-young's voice crackled through the radio. "Guards are moving to the east wing," she whispered. "You are clear to proceed." Haiyan-Wu quickly moved to Taemin's cage. He pulled out the duplicate key and inserted it into the lock. For a moment nothing happened, and he thought the key would not work. Then he heard a soft click and the cage door swung open. Taemin stepped out of the cage and immediately began to shimmer and fade. Within seconds he had become completely invisible. Haiyan-Wu could not see him at all, but he could hear his soft footsteps moving down the hallway. Now came the most dangerous part. Taemin had to make his way to the communications room without being seen. Even though he was invisible, he could still make noise or accidentally bump into something. If a guard noticed anything unusual, the whole plan would fail. Haiyan-Wu stayed near the cage area and watched for guards. His job was to make sure no one came to check on the cages while Taemin was gone. He held his breath and listened for any sounds that might indicate trouble. Meanwhile, So-young was in the east wing trying to keep the guards busy. She had triggered an alarm that indicated a possible fire in one of the storage rooms. The guards were searching the room trying to find the source of the alarm. She hoped they would stay busy long enough for Taemin to complete his mission. The minutes passed slowly. Haiyan-Wu kept checking the clock and worrying about all the things that could go wrong. What if Taemin could not figure out how to use the communications equipment? What if his invisibility wore off at the wrong time? What if the guards finished their search and returned to their posts early? After what felt like hours but was actually Only 8 minutes, Hyun-woo saw a shimmer in the air near cage 47. Taemin was becoming visible again. He quickly stepped back into his cage and Hyun-woo locked the door. "Did you send the message?" Hyun-woo whispered. "Yes," Taemin replied. "I was able to contact my people. They are coming to rescue me tomorrow night. They will create a distraction outside. The facility and I will escape during the confusion." Hyun-woo felt relieved and excited. The first part of their plan had worked, but now came an even bigger challenge. They had to help Taemin escape from the facility completely. This would be much more dangerous than just getting him out of his cage. So-young returned from the east wing and reported that the guards had found nothing and were returning to their normal posts. The false alarm had worked perfectly. Now they had to prepare for the final phase of the escape. Tomorrow night, Taemin's people would come to rescue him, but they would need help from inside the facility. Hyun-woo and So-young would have to create another distraction and help Taemin get to the outside where his people could pick him up. As they made their plans, Hyun-woo felt both excited and scared. They were about to help their friend escape and return to his family, but they were also about to commit a serious crime that could land them in prison for the rest of their lives. Despite the risks, they knew they were doing the right thing. Taemin did not deserve to be locked up like an animal. He deserved to be free and to return to his own people. Tomorrow night they would find out if their friendship was strong enough to overcome all the obstacles in their way. The next day passed like a nightmare for Hyun-woo and So-young. They had to act normal while knowing that tonight would change everything. Hyun-woo spent his last day cleaning the creature cages, knowing that tomorrow he would be moved to a different job. He tried to memorize every detail of Taemin's face because he might never see his friend again. During lunch, So-young approached him with worried news. She had overheard a conversation between Jin-ho and the head of security. They were planning to move several of the creatures to a more secure facility next week. Taemin was on the list. "We have to tell him," So-young whispered. "If the escape fails tonight, he might not get another chance." When Hyun-woo visited Taemin that afternoon, he shared the bad news. Taemin listened calmly, but his golden eyes showed worry. "Then tonight is our only chance," Taemin said. "If my people do not come or if something goes wrong, I will be moved to a place where escape is impossible." At 6:00 in the evening, strange things began to happen outside the facility. The guards reported seeing unusual lights in the sky. Some said they saw objects moving too fast to be normal aircraft. Others reported hearing strange sounds, like music coming from the forest around the facility. The head of security ordered all guards to be on high alert. He thought the facility might be under attack by unknown forces. Extra guards were posted at all the entrances and exits. Security cameras were switched to maximum sensitivity, but this was all part of Taemin's people's plan. They were creating distractions to confuse the human guards. They wanted the guards to focus on the outside threats while ignoring what was happening inside the facility. As night fell, the strange phenomena outside became more intense. Bright lights flashed in the sky like lightning, but with colors that did not exist in nature. The guards could hear music that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Some guards reported seeing figures moving in the forest, but when they investigated, they found nothing. At 9:00, the real distraction began. A massive holographic image appeared above the facility. It showed a giant creature with tentacles and glowing eyes. The creature roared and seemed to attack the building. The guards panicked and began shooting at the hologram, even though their bullets passed right through it. During the chaos, Hyun-woo and So-young made their move. They had positioned themselves near the cage area during the evening shift change. When all the guards ran outside to deal with the holographic creature, they found themselves alone with Tae-min. Hyun-woo quickly opened the cage door with the duplicate key. Taemin stepped out and immediately began to fade from sight. But this time he did not become completely invisible. Instead, he became transparent like a ghost. He could still be seen if someone looked carefully, but in the dim light and confusion, he would be hard to notice. "Follow me," Taemin said to his friends. "We need to get to the main exit." As they moved through the facility, they encountered something unexpected. Other creatures in the cages were becoming agitated. They seemed to sense that something important was happening. Some of them began making sounds that almost sounded like words, Wei Tae-min said suddenly. He stopped in front of cage 32, where a creature that looked like a walking tree was kept. The creature had bark-like skin and branches for arms. It had always been classified as a dangerous plant-based life form, but now the creature was speaking in a language that sounded like wind through leaves. Tae-min seemed to understand what it was saying. This is one of the forest folk, Tae-min said. Excitedly, he is asking for help. He says he has been trying to communicate with the guards for months, but they think he is just making random noises. We cannot save everyone tonight, So Young said. We barely have time to get you out safely, but... Tae-min was already working on the lock of cage 32. I cannot leave him behind, he said. He has children waiting for him on his home planet. His people have been searching for him just like mine have been searching for me. The tree-like creature stepped out of its cage and made grateful sounds. It moved slowly but with dignity. Tae-min spoke to it in the leaf-rustling language, and it nodded its branch-like head. As they continued through the facility, they passed cage 15, where the butterfly-like creature was kept. The creature saw them and began making beautiful musical sounds. It was clearly asking for help too. I know this one too, Tae-min said. She is one of the harmony folk. Her music can heal minds and bring peace to troubled souls. She does not belong. In a cage. So Young looked at the butterfly creature and felt her heart break. The creature was so beautiful and seemed so gentle. How could anyone think it was dangerous? We have to try to save them, So Young said. Even if it makes our escape more difficult. Hyun-woo was worried about the time, but he could not argue with his friends. They opened cage 15 and the butterfly creature fluttered out. She was larger than a human but moved with grace and gentleness. Her wings shimmered with colors that seemed to shift and change. As they made their way toward the exit, they discovered that other creatures were also intelligent. The being in cage 18 turned out to be a mathematician who had been calculating complex equations by tapping on the walls. The creature in cage 25 was an artist who had been creating sculptures from scraps of food and bedding. Soon they had a small group of escaped creatures, following them through the facility. Tae-min seemed to be able to communicate with all of them in their own languages. He was acting as a translator and guide, but their group was moving too slowly. The extra creatures could not move as fast as Tae-min. Some of them were weak from months of captivity. Others were injured or sick. Go ahead without us, the tree creature said through Tae-min. Save yourselves. We will follow if we can. No, Tae-min replied firmly. We all escape together or none of us escape at all. As they reached the main corridor leading to the exit, they heard voices behind them. Some of the guards had returned from investigating the holographic creature. They were doing a security check of the facility. The guards will see us soon, Hyun-woo said. We need to hide, but there was nowhere to hide with such a large group. The corridor was wide and empty. The guards would spot them immediately. Then the butterfly creature did something amazing. She began to sing a soft melody that seemed to fill the air with a strange energy. The lights in the corridor began to dim and flicker. The security cameras stopped working. Even the electronic locks on nearby doors began to malfunction. The tree creature joined in by making rhythmic sounds with his branches. The mathematician creature began tapping out complex patterns that somehow harmonized with the music. All the escaped creatures were working together to create some kind of interference field. The guards who were approaching suddenly stopped. They looked confused and disoriented. One of them shook his head as if trying to clear his thoughts. Another guard rubbed his eyes and said he could not see properly. What is happening to them? So Young whispered. The music is affecting their minds, Tae-min explained. The harmony folk can create songs that influence thoughts and perceptions. She is making the guards forget what they were doing and confusing their senses. The group of escaped creatures moved quickly past the confused guards. The guards stood in the hallway looking lost and bewildered. They would probably stand there for several more minutes before the effects wore off. As they reached the main exit, Tae-min suddenly stopped and grabbed Hyun-woo's arm. Wait, he said. I need to do something first. What are you doing? Hyun-woo asked. We need to leave now before more guards come. I need to disable the security system, Taemin said. If I do not, then the facility will be locked down and no one else will ever be able to escape. There are still dozens of intelligent beings trapped in those cages. Taemin ran to a security panel near the exit. He placed his hands on the electronic controls and his eyes began to glow with golden light. The panel started making strange humming sounds. Lights flashed and sparks flew from the circuits. The entire security system is shutting down, Taemin said. All the cage locks are opening. All the security cameras are going offline. The emergency barriers are retracting. Throughout the facility, alarms began to sound, but these were not security alarms. They were system failure alerts. The computer network was crashing and all the electronic systems were malfunctioning. Now, we go, Taemin said. They burst through the main exit into the cool night air. Outside the facility was chaos. Guards were running in all directions trying to deal with the holographic attacks and the system failures. No one noticed a small group of escaping creatures in the confusion. Tae-min led them toward the forest, where his people's ships were hidden. As they ran through the trees, Hyun-woo looked back at the facility. He could see lights flashing and hear alarms wailing. He realized that what they had done would change everything. After a few minutes of running, they reached a clearing in the forest. Suddenly, the air began to shimmer and 3 spacecraft became visible. They had been hidden by some kind of cloaking technology. The ships were beautiful and elegant with smooth curves and surfaces that seemed to glow with inner light. Beings that looked similar to Taemin emerged from the ships. They had the same pale blue skin and silver hair, but they wore flowing robes decorated with symbols that seemed to move and change. When they saw Taemin, they rushed toward him with obvious joy and relief. Tae-min embraced his people and spoke to them. The next morning brought chaos and confusion to the Galaxy Research Station. When the day shift workers arrived, they found the facility in complete disorder. Half the security systems were offline. Dozens of cages stood empty with their doors hanging open. The guards who had been on duty during the night were still confused and could not remember exactly what had happened. Park Jin-ho arrived early and immediately called for an emergency meeting. All the workers were gathered in the main conference room while security teams searched every corner of the facility. Jin-ho looked angry and frustrated as he tried to understand how such a massive security failure could have occurred. Someone sabotaged our systems, Jin-ho announced to the assembled workers. This was not an accident or a system malfunction. Someone deliberately helped the creatures escape. We will find out who was responsible and they will face serious consequences. Hyun-woo and So-young sat quietly in the back of the room trying to look as confused and innocent as everyone else. But Hyun-woo noticed that Jin-ho kept looking in their direction. He had a feeling that their supervisor suspected them. After the meeting, Jin-ho approached Hyun-woo directly. Where were you last night during the security incident? He asked. I was in my quarters sleeping, Hyun-woo replied. The alarms woke me up like everyone else. Jin-ho studied his face carefully. And you, So-young, where were you? I was also sleeping, So-young said. I had worked a double shift, and I was very tired. Jin-ho did not look convinced, but he had no proof of their involvement. The security cameras had malfunctioned during the escape, so there was no video evidence. The guards who had been on duty could not remember seeing anything unusual. Over the next few days, investigators arrived from Earth to study the incident. They questioned every worker and examined every piece of equipment. They were especially interested in the fact that only the intelligent creatures had escaped, while the truly dangerous animals had remained in their cages. One of the investigators was a woman named Dr. Park Min-young, who specialized in alien behavior. She had studied the facility records and noticed some interesting patterns. The creatures that escaped were all classified as potentially intelligent, she told Jin-ho during a briefing. But according to the official reports, they showed no signs of advanced thinking or communication abilities. This seems inconsistent. Dr. Park began interviewing the workers who had direct contact with the creatures. When she spoke to Hyenwu, she asked very specific questions about his observations. "Did you ever notice anything unusual about the creature in cage 47? She asked. No, Hyenwu said carefully. It seemed calmer than the others, but I assumed. It was just less aggressive. Dr. Park made notes and continued her questioning. Did you ever see it handling objects in ways that suggested tool use or problem-solving abilities? I do not think so, Hyenwu replied. It mostly just sat quietly in the corner, but Dr. Park was not satisfied with these answers. She had studied alien intelligence for many years, and she knew that truly intelligent beings would leave subtle signs of their capabilities. The fact that specific creatures had escaped suggested they had been planning and communicating. Meanwhile, news of the escape was spreading throughout the galaxy. Other research facilities reported similar incidents where their most intelligent captives had also escaped. It seemed like a coordinated effort involving multiple alien species. The story reached the news media on Earth and other planets. Reporters began asking uncomfortable questions about what exactly was being done to alien creatures at these research facilities. Animal rights groups and alien rights activists started demanding investigations. One reporter named Lee Dong-min managed to get an interview with a former facility worker who had quit several months earlier. The worker revealed that many of the so-called alien creatures were actually highly intelligent beings who had been captured while exploring space peacefully. They were not animals, the former worker said on live television. They were people with their own cultures and families. They could communicate and think and feel just like humans. Keeping them in cages was like keeping human prisoners of war. This interview caused a huge scandal. People across the galaxy were outraged to learn that peaceful alien explorers were being imprisoned and studied like laboratory animals. Protests erupted on dozens of planets. Politicians demanded immediate investigations. The pressure became so intense that the government had no choice but to launch a full inquiry into the research facility program. Teams of independent investigators were sent to every facility to examine their practices and interview their prisoners. When the investigators arrived at Hyenwu's facility, they brought advanced translation equipment and alien communication specialists. For the first time, the remaining creatures were able to tell their stories in their own words. The revelations were shocking. Many of the creatures were scientists and explorers from advanced civilizations. They had come to human space peacefully, hoping to make contact and share knowledge. Instead, they had been captured and imprisoned. One creature that looked like a giant spider turned out to be a mathematician who had solved equations that human scientists had been working on for decades. Another creature that resembled a floating jellyfish was actually a poet who had created beautiful works of art using light and sound. The investigators also discovered evidence that someone at the facility had been helping the creatures. They found books and magazines that had been given to the prisoners. They found records of improved nutrition and medical care for certain creatures. Someone had been treating them like people instead of animals. Dr. Park Min-young continued her investigation and eventually focused on Hyenwu and So-young. She had noticed that the creatures they had been assigned to care for were healthier and calmer than the others. She also found security footage from weeks earlier showing Hyenwu spending extra time near certain cages. I know you were involved in the escape, Dr. Park said during a private interview with Hyenwu. The evidence points to you and your colleague, So-young, but I am not here to arrest you. I am here to understand what really happened. Hyenwu looked at her carefully. She seemed different from the other investigators. She seemed genuinely interested in the truth rather than just finding someone to blame. If I tell you the truth, what will happen to us? Hyenwu asked. That depends on what the truth is, Dr. Park replied. If you helped innocent beings escape from unjust imprisonment, then many people would consider you heroes rather than criminals. So, Hyenwu decided to trust her. He told her everything about discovering Taemin reading the book. He described their friendship and their conversations about different worlds and civilizations. He explained how they had learned that many of the creatures were intelligent and peaceful. Dr. Park listened to the whole story without interrupting. When Hyenwu finished, she sat quietly for several minutes thinking about what she had heard. What you did was illegal, she said finally, but it was also morally correct. These beings did not deserve to be imprisoned. They were victims of fear. And Misunderstanding.Dr. Park included Hyun-woo's testimony in her official report. She recommended that all charges against him and So-young be dropped. She also recommended that the entire research facility program be shut down immediately. Her report caused another wave of outrage and demands for justice. The government was forced to admit that serious mistakes had been made. All the research facilities were closed and the remaining creatures were released, but the most important change was in how humans thought about alien life. The escape had proven that intelligence and consciousness could take many different forms. Just because a being looked different from humans did not mean it was less worthy of respect and freedom. New laws were passed to protect the rights of all intelligent beings regardless of their species or appearance. Peaceful contact protocols were established to prevent future misunderstandings. The galaxy became a safer place for explorers and diplomats from all worlds. Hyun-woo and So-young were eventually recognized as heroes who had helped expose an injustice. They received awards from multiple governments and alien civilizations. But they were most proud of the friendships they had made and the lives they had helped save. Years later, when Hyun-woo was an old man, he still kept the crystal pendant that Taemin had given him. Sometimes on clear nights he would look up at the stars and wonder about his friend. He knew that somewhere out there Taemin was living freely with his people, sharing knowledge and exploring the universe. The pendant would glow softly sometimes, as if Taemin was thinking about him too. It reminded Hyun-woo that friendship could cross any distance, and that doing the right thing was always worth the risk. The escape had changed everything. It had shown that humans were capable of growth and compassion. It had proven that different species could understand and help each other. Most importantly, it had demonstrated that intelligence and kindness could be found in the most unexpected places. The galaxy was now full of cooperation instead of fear. Humans worked alongside aliens to solve problems and explore new worlds. Children grew up learning about different cultures and species. The future was brighter because a few people had chosen friendship over fear, and it all started with a simple moment, when a young man found an alien quietly reading a book in a cage. That moment of recognition and empathy had ripple